welcome back to ChroniTalk. I'm your host, Mykayla Lynn, and today I am joined by a fellow spoonie, Abigail. Abigail is the host of Beyoutiful Legacy, a podcast that explores purpose and healing and authenticity, and she's here to just share all of that today and explore and navigate chronic illnesses and how that shaped her, but also did not erase her or her purpose. So, Abigail, thank you so much for being here, and I'm so excited to dive into the conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Like she said, my name is Abigail Gagnon, and I am the host of the Beyoutiful Legacy Podcast. I am a spoonie. I deal with migraines. I have a thyroid condition, spine issues, all kinds of other things as well. The main thing that really holds me back is the migraines. The spine stuff definitely does as well, but I did work for a long time and just dealt with that and wore a back brace and taped my knees because I also have knee issues. But the migraines really is what stops me from doing a lot of things because I deal with a lot of like silent migraines, and just migraines in general kind of are debilitating anyway. But with the aphasia, with the dizziness, the fainting, the pain, the light sensitivity, the noise sensitivity, all the things obviously doesn't really help when you're trying to work or do other things. So I found other ways to be able to contribute to society, I guess, besides working, and it's to fill my time.
Well, as a fellow chronic migraine sufferer over here, I definitely can't wait to dive into that conversation a little bit. So, like, when did the migraines start for you? Were you relatively young? Did it happen like later on in your life?
So for me, I started dealing with them when I got my period when I was 14, but it was very sporadic. It was normally just like on my cycle. Occasionally I'd get them if I was stressed. I would get a lot of ice pick ones. I don't know if you've ever experienced those. And I didn't know that's what it was. I just thought, oh my gosh, my eyebrow bone just hurts for like 3 minutes or whatever, really bad. Don't know what that is. And I didn't realize that it was a migraine. But that would happen. But it didn't start getting worse until 2016. So about 9 years ago. So I would have been 31. So I would have been 22, I guess, is when it started to get really bad. And I didn't know at the time that that was migraines because, like I said, a lot of them are silent. So I just thought I was getting a lot of stomach bugs all of a sudden, which to me didn't make sense. I was like, I've hardly ever gotten the flu or stomach bugs. I don't understand why I'm getting them all of a sudden. And I didn't really get sick a lot. So it also didn't make sense. But I just thought, I don't know. That's just what's happening. And the doctors couldn't figure out. It took a very long time. It wasn't until 2019 that they put all the pieces together because they were like, oh, well, maybe it is vertigo. Maybe you have, an ear issue. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And so I went to a lot of different doctors, did a lot of different tests. And like I said, it wasn't until 2019 that I got onto my current regimen and they were like, yeah, all of this is migraine related.
So who diagnosed it eventually? Did you see like a neurologist?
Yes.
And what does the regimen look like now?
Yeah, so I ended up seeing a neurologist. I had seen multiple neurologists, but they just kept upping my meds. They kept saying, well, you're dealing with migraines, but you're also dealing with other things. So they did lots of scans and stuff. And then when I went to my it's not my current neurologist, but the one right before the one I'm seeing now, she was like, yeah, all of this is migraine related. Like this dizziness, this fainting, all of that can be migraines. You can have silent migraines. That's what I think it is. So she put me on a different daily med because the one that he had me on that he just kept upping, she's like, no one should ever be on this medication is high dose. Like you're supposed to go a little bit up, and then if it's working, then switch to something else, or if it's not working, whatever. And I was dealing with numbness in my legs and in my hands and in my feet and stuff, and I did not know it was medication related. He just was like, oh, well, maybe it's something else. We'll do a CT, we'll do an MRI. It was really, really hard not knowing what was wrong with me. But then she told me about Ajovy. So there's a couple medications now, but at the time there wasn't very many at all, or if any, that were for migraines specifically. Most medications for migraines were things that they had found. Like the one that he just kept upping was originally for seizures, and then they realized that it helped with migraines and different things like that. So I ended up being on Ajovy. I was one of the first patients to take it. So they were like, oh, well, this is going to be really expensive because it's a biologic, But because of the fact that you're one of the first people to take it, for the time being, we can, get copay cards and whatever, and you can get it for $0 or potentially up to like $15, $20. So for the first couple of years, it wasn't that expensive. And then after I'd been on that for a few months, I ended up being able to get off my daily med, which I was really, really grateful for. And so now I'm just on the Ajovy, and then I have sumatriptan, and then I have the hydroxyzine, which originally I think it was an anxiety med, but it helps me with like the dizziness and stuff that I deal with silent migraines. So I will take a low dose of that sometimes as well, but I don't have to take them as often, and they actually work better now that I'm on the Ajovy. So I now take that every few months versus every month. I find that it works way better that way for me, because for me and a lot of other people as well, I'll have like a little bit of a wear off time with it. And then I'll have a couple days to a week afterwards where I feel worse and end up getting a migraine after the injection. And then I normally deal with it like on my period as well. So when I was taking it monthly, it was like I have like a week where I feel relatively okay. I'm like, this is, nice. It's better than every day. But at the same time, it wasn't ideal. So when I switched to every few months, it's a lot better, because I have, 1 month where I feel pretty crappy, but then I have 2 months where I feel relatively okay. And even though I still deal with migraines and headaches and stuff during that time, it's definitely way less than it was before that, because before it was every single day that I had a migraine or a really bad headache.
I love that you've been able to figure out like how to utilize that biologic to like work the best for you. Is that a self-administered biologic that you do?
So technically yes, but my husband does it because I could probably do it.
Same.
I could probably do it, but I think for myself, knowing that it does hurt, I think that it's easier for me to just have him do it, so that way I don't have to concentrate on the counting and whatever, and I can just, I don't know. I feel like it would be more difficult for me to do it myself. So he does it for me.
Yeah, I totally get that.
So he does it for me.
I'm on a biologic for asthma, and yeah, like I make my boyfriend do it every time, because like I feel like I would just pull it out because it feels like acid when it's going in. Like it just burns.
Yeah, no, that would be my fear. And so, and also with my arm too, if I did it myself, I feel like I'd have to put like 2 in my leg and then 1 in my stomach, because I feel like I wouldn't be able to put the proper pressure, because it needs to be on the side to the back of your arm. And so I feel like I wouldn't be able to get the proper angle to administer the meds the right way if I did it myself.
Yeah, totally. I get that. And I hear from a lot of people that biologics, like in general, do have that like intense, like stinging, burning, like a lot of them do hurt to administer. So as much as like we call them self-administered medications, yeah, it's tough because you still do often need somebody to help you with it.
Yes, absolutely.
So you talked a little bit here in your opening about your podcast, but can you share with us and my listeners just more about like the legacy of that and how you came to opening the Beyoutiful podcast?
Yes, absolutely. So for my podcast, I started 2 years ago, and at first I wasn't quite sure how many guests I would have on the podcast, but now most of the episodes are with special guests, and I have over 130 episodes out, and we just reached 2 years a couple weeks ago. No, like a week ago. And it's so exciting. And I really have always loved, learning people's stories, learning about people, what makes them tick, and also like connecting people with other people. And so I did that a lot with, in person when I was working. And then I also run an online community. And so that kind of, is that way as well. And then people kept saying like, Abigail, you have such a great podcast voice, or, you give such great advice. You should start a podcast. And I was like, well, maybe someday. I don't know if I really want to do that. I personally, now that I've heard my voice back with guest episodes and my own podcast, I don't hate my voice anymore. But it took me quite a few episodes to be like, okay, my voice isn't terrible. But anyways, and so I started out with some solo episodes and then some friends. And then over time, I started joining different communities and different things like that. And now I have people from all over the world that have reached out to me that will either pitch themselves or pitch other people to me. I've reached out to other people myself, and it's just been a lot of fun to be able to hear other people's stories. I have people that are coaches. I have people that, are stay-at-home moms, people that are authors, people that are musicians, people that work with different organizations. Generally, even though every single episode is different, it focuses on mind, body, soul health. So they kind of all go along with that type of theme and allowing people to share their stories. And, I think that no matter what your story is, that we can leave a legacy. It's not necessarily just if you have a bunch of money or a company or children, because there's so many people out there that don't have children, that either can't have children, don't want children, whatever it is, or don't have the feasibility to buy a bunch of properties and have those to leave their children or whatever, or to start a business. And so I think that, our legacy is how we treat people and how we'll be remembered. And, with the podcast, allowing people to share their stories, that also gives people to be able to listen to these people sharing their stories that they may know or maybe don't know, and just love to hear what they have to say. And I've learned so much and been able to grow a lot from different people. Some of them, especially like the coaches and the therapist, I feel like I'm getting a free therapy session by just talking to them, which has been really, really awesome. And yeah, I really love it. We're starting season 5 this week on Friday, and I'm so excited for all the people that I have lined up to chat with over the next, couple months.
That's so exciting. I mean, I love the purpose of yours. It resonates a lot with me and a lot with ChroniTalk. I just kind of dove right out there. I just was like, hello, internet, I'm here. What's up? And then just started naturally finding everybody, or you guys find me. And like you said, it's just been an amazing process, to get to know what makes people tick. What is their thing? What do they want to be known for? All those things are so important. And I think it helps so much to share these stories so that when somebody else is feeling really new in their journey, they feel like they have somewhere to turn. And I think that's so important. But a big emphasis I put on ChroniTalk here is definitely getting out the other people's, motivations and their purpose and their drives, because whether it be a podcast like yours or somebody is doing, the rallies and advocacy work out in the world, in the wilds, it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether or not you're just posting stuff on the internet or however you approach it. I think every little bit of it is important. And this community is growing so fast over the last few years that it's important for these staples to be there, you to be hey, I have something that you can dive into. 130 episodes is amazing. And they can really go back and find something that resonates with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have so many people too that are also spoonies as well. And there are different people that have their own companies, or one person has an adaptive clothing line and she's been, on Good Morning America and all this stuff. And I was like, that is so cool that, she did it to help herself because she has muscular dystrophy and is in a wheelchair. And then it exploded into what it is today for her. And I love hearing people take the things that they struggle with and then take those and turn it into something that not only they can be passionate about, but can also help other people too. And so I've loved doing it. I love to be able to chat with different people and hear different people's stories. And like I said, to be able to have different topics as well. The episode that just came out last week was with someone that was homeless in her 40s, had a gambling addiction, and then she turned her life around and now helps people manage money, have good relationships with money, budgeting, all that kind of stuff. And so, we do have some more, I guess, life skill episodes like that. But for the most part, it's, people sharing their stories. And part of what she is advertising and doing with her book, she also has a story to tell too. And so I think that that's really important too, to go behind just, the person's course or whatever it is, because I think sometimes different episodes I have listened to of other people's podcasts, which nothing against them, obviously, but it's just focused strictly on the course they're selling and selling that item. And I feel like getting underneath that and getting to see why did they start this course, what in their own life propelled them to do what they're doing today, I think is really interesting, and also really important to also have people connect with them and actually want to do their course and not just do their course just because they're looking for something like that, something, to do it because they resonate with what they have to share.
Totally. Yeah. Because there's a lot of people in this space, and sometimes we're we don't, as the podcast side, and sometimes we think oh, we don't want people to just buy anything out there too. We don't want you to just look for a quick fix. So I think some of that just comes from genuine concern that we want the educational resources that they're reaching out to also be, of value. I know that when I've looked at making a course, I've looked at partnering with multiple people to ensure that if there was a course that was available, it will cover a lot of basis and have a lot of different resources in it. And I think that when there's like more of a base built and people are able to dig a little bit deeper within, kind of what they're trying to educate people on, it can be very much more beneficial in the long run, because those people are looking for not just a quick fix anyways. They are really looking for like what could help them bring themselves back up. And for everyone that can look very different. So maybe it needs to be like different courses or different sections for people. And I think like something that you really kind of focused on there for a little bit was that you were working and now you're not. So a lot of people who are in the chronic illness or disability community are looking for ways to find, an income at home. And so I think that that's awesome. And I love supporting those. So are you working currently? Are you on some form of disability right now?
So, no to both. I did apply for disability, and they told me that I worked too much while I was sick. And so they told me that I didn't qualify, because when I was dealing with all the stuff, I would drive to work, shouldn't have been driving, because I'd have to pull over a lot of the time because I was too dizzy and would puke on the side of the road and be vomiting at my desk and putting people on mute because I worked at a contact center. Like, it was bad. I should not have been working. Fainted. Bosses saw me faint. Like, I had to be, they almost had me taken by ambulance at one point because they're like, we don't think you should drive. And I was like, oh, if I eat some food and have some water, I'll be fine. And I drove myself to the hospital. So like, I did all these things and I pushed myself, and looking back now, I wouldn't have done that if I had known like that was going to prevent me. But they were like, oh yeah, you worked X amount of hours when you were this sick, so we think that you can actually do it. And I was like, I did, but I shouldn't have. But anyways.
Wow. That's actually like my biggest fear right now. I'm in the process of trying to transition from full-time work, and I haven't even been making it to work half of the time. I know I've told you a little bit over text that like I've been struggling, but I think one of my biggest concerns here going to apply for things and trying to navigate how is like, how do I make them know that I'm struggling the way that I am to be able to receive that help? Because I hear a little too often this whole like, I can't prove to them that I'm really as sick as I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that it's hard too, because having like a dynamic disability, when you can do something one day or do something in the morning, and then all of a sudden you get hit with a migraine or whatever, and then not be able to do anything the rest of the day. So I think that it's really hard to prove that when it's invisible. And unless like, and even when I was fainting, that day that I fainted at work, or one of the days, and they were like, oh yeah, we're gonna, call an ambulance, whatever. And I was like, no, I don't think I can afford that. I will drink water, whatever. I'm gonna drive myself. Drove myself. And he's like, well, what do you want me to do? Because I was caught and they put me in a chair. And he was like, well, you didn't fall on the ground, and so there's nothing I can do for you. And I said, because someone caught me and put me in a chair, that disqualifies me from actually fainting. And he's like, yeah, well, you just need to see your PCP. Yeah. And I was like, well, what's my PCP going to do? They can't do any scans. They can't do anything, whatever. And he was like, well, then try and see a specialist. And I was like, okay, thanks.
Yeah. Just getting passed from one to another to another. It's just awful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's terrible. And I mean, it helps in some ways that I have a high pain tolerance and am fairly good at, faking being well. But I think that sometimes it can be really hard when you're in the hospital. There was one time I went and my back was hurting so bad. Like, I was almost crying, but I was like, okay, I'm going to hold it together. And he was like, well, if you're in as much pain as you are saying you are, you'd be crying. And I'm like, thanks so much.
Yeah, like, thanks. So helpful.
Yep. Yeah, he's like, there's nothing I can do for you.
I think that's a really key topic, actually, is like, yeah, that's awful. Like, often they're like looking at us and they're like, oh, well, you're not in enough pain to be an 8 out of 10 on a pain scale. And it's like, I am, but I live with a constant chronic complex illness. So I think it is really hard to prove to them sometimes that we're in pain, because like you said, you're driving yourself to work, you know that you have a migraine, you know you're feeling unwell, you know you shouldn't be doing this, you're still doing it. And I mean, I myself find myself in that predicament far too often where I'm just pushing and I'm just going. And then, I start to get upset because I look at the person next to me and like they've taken the day off because they have a cold. Well, that's what they should be doing. So really I should be upset with myself for pushing myself. And then it ultimately leads us to, these predicaments where we're like trying to prove how much pain we're in because we're living with this pain all the time, but we're not really showing people that we're in this much pain.
Yeah. And it's hard because, you need to make money. And that's part of why I kept pushing myself. And I'm also that type of person. I get it from my dad anyways. And I've been like that for a long time. I used to when I worked in a kitchen, I would get kicked out. Like my boss would literally walk me to the door and he would be like, you are going to go to your cabin and I'm going to have one of your coworkers that are staying in the cabin with you walk you to your cabin and make sure you get in bed because I don't trust you not to just come back. And I was like, it's funny now, but at the time, like, I would get so mad. And looking back, I'm like, Abigail, clearly you weren't okay if he's kicking you out and you're feeding like 500 people and he's telling you that you need to go rest, because if you actually felt good, he wouldn't be doing that. But yeah, I definitely was the type to push myself, and it backfired in that case. But at the same time, I feel like if I was getting disability, depending on how much I were to get, I feel like it would basically just cover health insurance. And like, I don't think I'd be getting enough to really be able to pay much else. And we go through like the healthcare marketplace for insurance. And I feel like even if I were to hold down a job, which I'm so sporadically like, okay, even with the I'm much better. But I still feel like if I were to work, I'd push myself and then I would be like, oh, now I'm going to call up for 2 weeks and then I'd end up getting fired. But if I were to hold down a job and work part-time, I feel like it would just be enough to cover insurance. And because we're through the healthcare marketplace and get like the government tax credit or whatever, I feel like we would then make too much to be able to qualify for that. And then we would have to pay more for insurance. And then in the end, it wouldn't be worth it anyway, which I feel like is really tough because it's just annoying. It's like when you have kids and you're just working for daycare. Tough. And it's like, well, then why, like, you could be home with your kids if you're just working. I mean, I get sometimes people do it because they want socialization or whatever. I get that. But my point is if you're just working to pay for one thing, and I don't know. It's tough.
No, I agree. Yeah. Like my friend and I were kind of in that predicament. She's a stay-at-home mom and it was like, should I even try to work? And it's like, no, like, because if you just make what you're putting out, it's not worth it because you could just be spending the time with your kids. And so when it comes to our health, that is really important that you're not wasting the only spoons that you do have to like go to work to only pay for what? Just your insurance? Like that's not enough. So what is your support system like? Like how are you making things work? What do you do to fill your time?
Yeah, so my husband is one of my biggest support systems. I'm married and I'm very, very thankful that he, even if we weren't together, even if I wasn't chronically ill, like he is very much kind of a workaholic. So I feel like he would work a ton anyway, just because he loves to stay busy. So he works a lot. Sometimes it's hard because then I feel bad because I'm like, I can see that you're that it is what it is. And as far as how I fill my time, when I can, I, take care of our home. I do an online community. I run like an online community of support groups and stuff like that. So I manage that, post for that, go live, I'm there for the members, that kind of thing. Cool. I guest on podcasts. I host my podcast. I organize different things with that. And I try and message people, Marco Polo people. I try and stay busy and social as much as I can, even from home. And we live on water. So now that it's nice out, I spend as much time as I can down in the water or on the dock and reading. For a long time, I could not really read because of how dizzy and my vision was and how shaky I was. Like I just could not hold a book and be able to read it. And so I'm so, so grateful that I'm able to do that now because I love to read. And for years, even when I was working a ton, I would read so many books throughout the summer. And throughout the year in general. And it took me a while to be able to get even to like half of probably what I used to read in a summer in a whole year. But I love reading. So I'm really enjoying that and just being okay with it's not what it used to be, but it still is way better than it was when I couldn't read at all. So I'm taking that as a win.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, it sounds awesome that you've been able to figure out like a good balance here? I mean, like, obviously we understand that there is like a daily struggle and you're going to wake up and have really hard days, but to be able to like find all these different ways of like connection and community and coping and everything, like building the legacy, sharing other people's legacies, the creativity, like all of it is just amazing. So like, good for you. Just straight up good for you. And congratulations on the second year of your podcast. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so grateful that I have been able to find ways to stay busy and to fill my cup and to also, fill my time. Because when I first was sicker and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me, I started going into a depression because I couldn't work as much sometimes. And I was stressed out about bills. I was stressed out about not knowing what was wrong with me. And I'm just really glad that even though I do have some days where it's really hard and I'm like, why me? I feel like we all have those as chronic illness people. And we all have those days in general. I feel like no matter whether you're chronically ill or not. But I try and focus, like I said, on what I can do when I couldn't do it then. And, I think sometimes that can be, I don't want to say toxic, but like toxic positivity, I guess, is a thing. But I try not to do that. I try to be realistic and not be like, oh, well, it could be worse, so it's not bad. But I also try and remain positive as much as I can and try and find the good. If I was working all the time, I wouldn't have the time to read as much maybe because I'd be using all my spoons for work. I wouldn't probably be able to invest time in my podcast, or it would be very limited, maybe like an episode a month or something. I wouldn't be able to do as much with the community that I run. I wouldn't be able to keep up with as many friends with the Marco Polo ambassador program I'm a part of. Like, there's so many things that I do now that I love that I wouldn't probably be able to do if I was working, because I would be so sick when I wasn't working that I wouldn't be able to do all the things. And I feel like also the house would probably fall apart because my husband would be working, I'd be working, and when I wasn't working, I would be too sick to do it. So there are a lot of things that I'm able to do that I'm grateful for, that I wouldn't be able to do if I was using the spoons to work. So I'm grateful.
My house is falling apart. My life is falling apart. I have no spoons left. I am current old Abigail, and I aspire to be current Abigail.
Yes, I definitely
wanted to touch a little bit on the podcast itself, surrounding more of like the community and the connections that you have made. What are like some of the ones that stand out to you within your story? So like my first guest, for example, was, or second guest, I can't quite remember. She was one of the first podcasts that I had listened to help guide in my story. So what's something like that happened for you?
I feel like there's so many because I feel like every
Yeah.
season I'll have like, oh my gosh, this is my new favorite episode, and then I'll record another one and I'll be like, this is my new favorite. But I think for me, one of the things, I've had a couple people from different organizations on that I love. I think one was season 1 and one was season 2. It's hard to remember. I've like put out so many in the last 2 years. But anyways, one of the organizations I had on, someone from Love Justice, which is a human trafficking organization, and I have followed the organization for a while. I really love what they do. And so when I reached out to them and was like, I was pretty new to the podcasting community, so I'm pretty sure it was season 1, and I was very new, and I was like, hey, like, I don't know if anyone would be available, but I really love what you guys do, and I'd love to have someone from your organization on and whatever. And they were like, oh yeah, we'd love to, we'll connect you with this person. And she came on, and it was so cool to be able to chat with her and be able to learn more about it. And then like also just have someone from something that I've been following for a while. And then another organization was To Write Love on Our Arms, and I've been following them for many years as well. It's a mental health organization, and they're incredible, and they go to a lot of like music festivals, which is how I'd heard of them back in maybe 2012, 2013, somewhere in there. And so it'd been a while that I'd been following them. And so it was so cool to be able to chat with someone and learn a little bit more about their story. And like, I just love that people, no matter what they've done, like I have them on, and it's just such a conversational like thing. While I do kind of have, some are a little bit more interview like with the organizations, because they're like sharing what the organization does. Like I've had people that are actors that have been like, one person, she has been on SVU, I think 2 or 3 times as a guest star, because they like tend to reuse people. And I've since become friends with her, and we chat sometimes and we text, which is cool. And it was really cool to like watch the show and see her on there and be like, I've talked to her. And she was also in an episode of like Manifest and then like a couple other things as well. And then I, talked to someone that worked on the Jerry Springer show. And like, it's just really cool to be able to talk to these people that have like done all these incredible things that, are taking the time to talk to, little old me. And also like just to hear their stories and to hear, I think it just shows that, everyone starts from somewhere. Everyone has a story. Everyone's human. And, they struggle with stuff just as much as the rest of us. And I don't know. I just love being able to share people's stories. I had someone on that we did a 2-part episode on dreams because I'm a very vivid, avid dreamer. I've always been. As a kid, like everyone would be like, what did you dream? We want to hear your dream, because they're always like so story-like and outlandish and crazy. And so I saw someone on TikTok that was sharing about like dreams and how she, helped people interpret their dreams and whatever. So I messaged her or commented on her thing and was like, hey, would you be interested in coming on my podcast? And she responded right away. And so she came on and we talked for so long. It was a 2-parter, which was cool. And then she came back on with a friend of mine, which that episode's coming out end of July, first week in August. And we actually shared like some of our personal dreams with her and then talked to kind of about dream themes. And one of the dreams I shared was pretty crazy. So definitely people that are listening here should go check that out. They were both shocked. They were like, what are we going to do with this? We don't know how to interpret this. This makes no sense. But it was a lot of fun. Such a great conversation. And I'm hoping to maybe have them come back on a regular basis and just, share different dreams, because I just think it's so fascinating and so fun. And yeah, different spoonies I've had on. Like I said, the one that, now has a clothing line that's adaptable for people in wheelchairs and different things. Yeah. Somebody's a copywriter and has a big business with that, and just different things like that. I had one person on too that we had a 2-part episode about the grief of the spoonie life and grieving, our old self, or grieving different things that we want to do that we can't do, plans that we have to cancel, people that don't get it, that sometimes it's really hard. It's been so fun to be able just to chat with people, hear their stories, and share it with other people. Because I have, for years, I've had so many amazing conversations. I'm like, someone would love, get so much out of this if they were able to listen to this. So I love being able to have that. And with the Marco Polo Ambassador Program, I was a part of a community group, or am a part of a community group for podcast hosts. And we continued the group after the Marco Polo cohort or whatever ended. And we call ourselves PodFam. And so my PodFam girls, a couple of them have been on, and we've just been able to chat. And one of them is going to be coming on later this year. And so I love being able to like introduce like the friends that I've had on, them and other people. I love being able to introduce them to my listeners and be like, this is a friend of mine. And, we've been friends for a long time. And I'm so excited for you to, get to meet them and learn about them. And I had a friend that took her life a couple years ago, and I had her brother on the podcast, and who I'm also friends with. And it was a really therapeutic thing to be able to talk about her and talk about grief. And after the conversation, a couple times, like, he's messaged me and been like, it was really helpful to be able to chat about that with you. And I'm just really glad that we were able to record that, because there have been so many people that have struggled with grief that have been like, your vulnerability and like talking through like what you're going through and whatever was really helpful. I don't know, there's just so many that I've just loved being able to have the conversations and then getting to share them with, the world. Because like I said, I've got listeners all over the place, which is really cool.
I love that. And I also appreciate like how you cover different topics too. Like you're covering some things, like you said, on like grief or finances or addiction. And a lot of times, a lot of those things play hand in hand with chronic illnesses and disabilities, or vice versa. People can get chronic illnesses or disabilities from addictions and stress and all of these other things that they often, cohabitate with each other. So I think it's nice that you're able to cover a lot of that and also bring in listeners that maybe necessarily aren't in the chronic illness disability space, but you're bringing them into that space and vice versa.
I want to raise awareness. I want people to realize that, we're just people too, and we struggle. And even if it's something that they don't necessarily understand, like there's so many people that you may meet that have like invisible chronic illnesses that you have no idea. Like if I'm walking in a store, no one would know. Like even if I'm wearing my blue light glasses, they don't know it's blue light glasses. I have them on because of the fluorescent lights or whatever. Like people that would know unless I said something. So I think that there are just so many things that I think raising awareness for is so important. And I think that everything, mind, body, soul health, like all of it is tied in together. And, well, some episodes are more about all three. Some of them are about just, body. Some are about just more of diet, whatever. And I think that it's really important to talk about all of it. And I had someone on, I think it was a 2-part episode that came on, and she talked about how she had seizures, and it was because of a trauma that she had dealt with when she was a kid, and she didn't realize that it was that. And when she worked on healing that, she stopped having seizures. And so while I don't think all of it is, because of your mental health, I think that some of it can be tied into that. Like, I think for me, when I've now worked on the last couple of years, a lot of trauma and worked on my mental health, worked on my spiritual health and all of that, and learned to listen to my body more, I think regardless of the meds, I don't think if I were to get off the meds that I would be how healthy I am now. But I think that stuff definitely has contributed to how I feel, because I've been able to work on that. And I think that did, stress, if I'm going through stress, my grandfather passed away early this month. My father was in and out of the hospital within the same week. Like, it was a lot at once. And I definitely did not feel very well, around the anniversary of my friend's death. I know that I don't feel very well. So emotions definitely tie in. And I think that it's important to highlight that so that people realize, like, they're not crazy. Because, for so long, I think that I thought that. I thought, that it was all in my head. And while, mental health, I guess you could say, is in your head, it's not in the term that people say, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. Like, they're more saying it's in your head, like you're making it up. And no, it's like in your head, like it's a chemical imbalance. It's something that needs to be worked through. It's something that a lot of us need therapy for, need support for. And mental health is like one of the very key components, regardless of if you can cure something that's happening to you or not. You can always improve what's happening to you by getting that help. I think it's like important for anyone, even someone who says maybe upfront that they're not struggling. I feel like almost anyone could benefit from like therapy, support, community growth, and like just communities in general. So I think it's always important for us to be focusing on the other things in our life as well. Like Abigail said, the stress, the addiction, grief, all of those things. We're never going to be able to avoid those things. We're only ever going to be able to work on them and to be able to adapt them into our life and our current problems. And is there anything else that you kind of feel like we should touch on that's a big key component of your podcast or your story or anything related?
I guess I would just say that one of the things that I like to touch on, and I've touched on other guest appearances as well, is our purpose. Because, and I think I've touched on it a little bit in this conversation, but I think that our purpose can shift, just like, your job can shift, your friendships can shift, your relationships can shift. And I think sometimes we get so focused on, for me, a long time of, my purpose was working in food service. And that was a big part of me. And I felt really depressed when I was not able to do that. And some of it, yes, was my health and not having answers. But some of it was, this is my purpose. Now that I can't do this, what am I supposed to do? Like, what's the point anymore? And I think that that's natural. I think grieving, the loss of jobs, grief comes in so many forms. You can grieve so many different things. But I think that it's important to remember that sometimes things are for just seasons. And that doesn't take away from how great that was. It doesn't take away that was a big part of your life then, but it shifted. And you can take the lessons that you learned. You can take the experiences, the knowledge that you have from that part of your life into the next season. And that it doesn't take away one from the other, but our purpose can shift. Like working in food service, a lot of it, I did a lot of managing and organizing and different things. And not to say that I wasn't good at managing and organizing things before. I'm an older sibling. I'm the oldest, so, that kind of comes with that territory. But I think that I'm able to then put that into my podcast, put that into the community that I run, and also put that into organizing my life, around my shots to some degree. And also I try and schedule things out so that I'm not doing so much at once, because there are so many things that I could be cleaning or doing in the house. But I try and break it up throughout the week, break it up throughout the month. Some things I do every other month, whatever. Because if I try and do all of it at once, I am going to burn out. I think anyone could burn out doing that, but especially someone that's chronically ill. So I try and, yes, sometimes it's hard if I see something is dusty or dirty and I'm like, oh, I really should clean that. But I tell myself, hey, that is on your schedule for next week. You will take care of that next week. Just leave it. It's fine. And sometimes it's very hard to do, but I think that being able to just realize that, your purpose doesn't go away just because it changes, just because how it looks changes. You still have purpose, you still have worth, you still have, you still are enough just by being. And that is something that's been really hard for me to learn, but, reminding myself that, doing more can't add to my worth. So doing less can't subtract from it. And I used to have to repeat that to myself so many times in a day. And it was really hard for a very long time. But I realized this past beginning of June, when I was struggling with my grandfather, with my shots, with my dad, whatever, I realized that I allowed myself to sleep in and do these things I need to do. And I didn't even register oh, this is because of all the work that you've done to be able to rest. I was just oh, I'm actually resting and not overdoing it. And so I was able to get back to my routine faster after my shots and after all that than I might have otherwise, which I think is really important. Now, granted, I could do all those things and I still might not have been able to do it, because as anyone that is a chronic illness person knows, you can collect all the spoons you want and magically, the spoon fairy or whatever will just take them and you will be like, but I was collecting those. I was collecting those for this event and now they're all gone. But I think that it is important to try and, rest. And it's okay. And your worth doesn't fluctuate if you're resting or if you're doing all the things, which for me, for a long time, it was really hard to reconcile that and realize that and actually practice it.
Yeah. I mean, actually practicing it there, that's the key. That's the hard part. I appreciate everything there. I 100% agree with it. You really give us a lot of good insight, and I appreciate you sharing your story here today and just being so honest and open with us and sharing more about your podcast. So if the listeners want to go and find Abigail, where would they find you?
So you can find me on Instagram on Beyoutiful_Legacy, and that is spelled Beyoutiful, not the traditional spelling of beautiful. And so it's Beautiful_Legacy. And you can also find me the same username on Threads. You can also find that on Facebook as well, but just Beautiful Legacy. Or if you Google me, if you Google Beautiful Legacy, it will come up. The website probably will come up. I'm very Googleable. The podcast is very Googleable, I should say, which is kind of cool. I've done it. I've Googled a couple of times just to see what would come up, to see if there's a new place that it's being put on that I didn't know, or sometimes there's random sites that review podcasts that I've been able to be oh, here's a review of the podcast that I didn't know. And it's just so cool. I feel so official whenever I Google it and the first thing that pops up is a picture of me and a summary of the podcast. So you could also just Google it and find it on all the podcast platforms. It's not on YouTube. Technically it is. I do post some shorts on there with clips of the podcast or whatever, but I don't post full episodes. So if you follow it on YouTube, you will be disappointed about episode wise, but I do post them sometimes.
You will be disappointed.
You will be disappointed if you're hey, I'm looking for episodes. That's not the place. Any other podcast platform, you can find it.
That's so awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And again, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your story. And anybody who wants to go learn more about Abigail and the Beyoutiful Podcast, head over there to all of her socials. Go give her a follow. Go subscribe and and do the same with ChroniTalk while you're at it, because we love that. As I've said a little bit in the following podcast and as a little bit in this one, I haven't been doing well. It has been very hard for me to even be here and keep this going, but we're doing it. I'm probably going to skip another week next week. You'll see that I take these random little skips. And that's really to just ensure that the ones that I do have scheduled, we're trying to get here too. This is the part of the reminding to give yourself grace, keep the conversation going, and just always being graceful to others and being kind to others as well. I think I will probably be doing an episode here soon for you guys to give you a little bit more context about my story. I know I haven't shared a lot. I guess I wasn't expecting the influx of support right off the bat to have so many guests that I kind of just ran with the guests. So I will get there. And I appreciate you guys all being here and appreciate you listening to Abigail's story, everybody else's stories, and to following them and supporting them as well. So again, the reminder to give yourself grace, keep the conversation going, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks again, Abigail.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I loved chatting with you.